Like,
Dear friends, welcome to this most exciting fireside. We've been waiting for Dr. Etemad to join us for another fireside. We've been waiting for a long time, and at last he had the time to share with us. Dr. Etemad, thank you for joining us tonight. We will start with 3 prayers by Mr. Liu and Juliet from where?
Malaysia.
Malaysia, yes, I know you were in China. And after that, by Quanta Dawn, a Turkish prayer, and of course, Holy Tara later on. Please, if I would ask you to mute yourselves, I will mute myself as well, and then ask Juliet and Mr. Liu.
Okay, let's pray. Terangilah hati kami, kurniakanlah kami mata yang melihat dan telinga yang mendengar. Bukalah pintu pengertian sebenar dan biarlah cahaya keimanan bersinar dengan gilang gemilang. Terangilah hati kami, kurniakanlah kami mata yang melihat dan telinga yang mendengar. Bukalah pintu pengertian sebenar dan biarlah cahaya keimanan bersinar dengan kilat gemilang.
Ey efendim, yüzünü sana dönen benim, umutlarını Fazlının mucizelerine ve cömertliğinin belirtilerine bağlayan benim. Yalvarırım sana ki beni rahmet kapından eli boş gönderme ve emrini inkar edenlere terk etme. Tanrım, ben kulunum ve kulunun oğluyum. Senin günlerinde gerçekliğini bildim. Adımlarımı senin teklik kıyılarına yönelttim. Eşsizliğini ve birliğini kabul ettim. Af ve bağışını diledim. Senin gücün yeter dilediğini yapmaya. Nurlular nurlusu ve affedici bir ilah yoktur senden başka. Bahá'u'lláh. Ey ya ruhani in Yusuf esrar به بازار در آمد ای چشم تو روشن ای چشم تو روشن با روی منور با موی معنبر در محفل ابرار درآمد ای ای چشم تو روشن ای چشم تو روشن با آرزوی گل با ساغر پرمال در محفل انوار درآمد ای چشم تو روشن ای چشم تو روشن با آن لب خندان با نرگس فتان در مجلس اخیار آمد ای چشم تو روشن ای چشم تو روشن ای یار روحانی این یوسف اسرار به بازار در آمد ای چشم تو روشن ای چشم تو روشن با روی منور با موی منبر در محفل ابرار در آمد ای چشم تو روشن ای چشم تو روشن ای چشم تو روشن ای چشم تو روشن
You, Mr. Liu and Juliet, I'm very happy that you came back from China. Don't miss one more fireside, please. Kwanta Don, thank you, thank you. Appreciate it. And of course, Holy Tara, thanks for starting today's fireside. We have a very special fireside tonight. We've been waiting for Dr. Etemad to join us for almost a few months, but he wanted me to call him Kambeze, which I can't do that for the sake of recording. Thank you, Dr. Etemad, for joining us. He's an educator, author, psychiatrist, and of course, he added that he's an amateur musician. I don't accept that, but because he wrote, what can I do? He's most glad, what he's most glad about it is now, is that he's retired in his retired role as a homeschool dad. He recently launched Talisman Development Services, LLC, a training and consulting company that combines principles from multiple fields into a fresh approach toward maximizing human capacity in life and work for individuals, groups, and organizations. He's going to speak about some distinguishing claims and features of Bahá'u'lláh and his revelations. For the sake of friends who are not here from Russia, because it's too early, we will upload this on YouTube very soon. Kambeze Khan, go ahead, please.
Thank you. It's always a treat to be in this type of learning environment, to be a participant or a catalyst. So thank you for making this happen. It's such a great service. Let me set up the share. How does that look? Okay, good. So it's a long, complicated title, but it's basically, I wanted to share two categories of teachings or facts or principles that come from the Baha'i faith. One category are what are called the fundamental verities, and that term is actually found in the Baha'i literature itself from Shoghi Effendi and from the Universal House of Justice. And the distinguishing claims and features, interestingly, comes from early on in the early history of the Baha'i faith, which we'll get to in a second. So let me see if I can advance. Okay. Just a quick reminder, everything about the Baha'i faith refers back to the life and the work of its founder, Bahá'u'lláh. In the 1800s, Bahá'u'lláh advanced the announcement and the claim that he was a conduit of the divine for humanity for this particular time in human history. And that's all we'll do in terms of history, but it's important to recognize that everything revolves around, well, what did he really say? What were the most distinguishing and the most universal things that he said? When I was still in college, which was a very long time ago, I was reading one of the major historical books of early Babi and Baha'i history, Nabil's narrative, The Dawnbreakers. And in there's the stories not only of the two prophet founders of the Babi and Baha'i movements, but of the chief disciples, the primary disciples of the movement. And two of those primary disciples were Qudus and Mullah Hussein. And from a historical point of view, it is very arguable that Qudus can be considered the prime disciple of the Bab. There is some new evidence that indicates that, in fact, Tahir might outrank him, but that's for the experts and scholars to bring into the discussion. But if you've ever talked with Nadir Saidi, he would bring quotes and historical events that would reinforce that. But in terms of the general generic narrative of the Babi movement, Qudus was the commander-in-chief of the Babis in the absence of the Bab himself. And there is one scenario in the Babi history where Qudus gives instructions to basically the second in command, Mullah Hussein. And he basically gives him the assignment to go meet with several of the mujtahids of the region that they were in to tell them about the Babi movement. And Qudus specifically instructs Mullah Hussein to fearlessly disclose to his, meaning the mujtahid's eyes, the distinguishing features of this revelation. When I read this, it struck me that there was a focus, there was an emphasis on identifying what would be the distinguishing features of the revelation of the Bab, of the revelation of Baha'u'lláh. And it began my own journey to come up with my own list. So I'm going to share with you my own list. It's nothing official. It's just the world according to Kambeze. And the idea is that everybody finds out what those distinguishing things are for themselves by talking to each other, by reading, by having discussions, going to classes, and coming up with your own working list. Before we get to that list, I want to share some of the fundamental verities, some of the core principles that aren't necessarily unique to the Baha'i revelation, but they provide a context to appreciate the distinguishing features. And these are verities, these are teachings or truths that have to do with God, creation, history, humanity, and religion. Very quickly. So let's start with God and the universe. At the core of every monotheistic religion is the idea that there is only one God, and that this God is completely inaccessible to everything else in the universe. And in academic circles, this belief is called radical monotheism. It means there's only one, but that reality can never be directly encountered. And it's clearly found in the other monotheistic faiths. And even though God is inaccessible, everything in the universe, everything metaphysical and everything physical, is an expression of some degree of godliness, of that divine beauty. And so the entire universe is a spectrum of multiple colors, of mirrors that are reflecting one tiny frequency of godliness. But God itself is beyond even adding all of those things up, is beyond that. And so the concept of the oneness of God is not new. It's just reiterated by Baha'u'lláh, and it is emphasized in new ways and in old ways that people are familiar with. And the most important thing is that God is beyond any attribution we can give it as human beings. We may call it a him because our language is limited, or we might attribute it certain human characteristics because that's the only way we can think about anything. But Baha'u'lláh makes it clear that God is sanctified above all attributes and holy above all names, and yet it is the orb, it is the pulse from which everything originates. And all created things, their purpose is to reflect whatever degree of godliness with which it has been endowed. And so within that, the purpose of humanity, according to Baha'u'llah's teachings, which again is not necessarily unique to the Baha'i teachings, is to know and worship the divine, to try to relate with the divine directly, but also to know the little bit of divinity within ourselves, to interact with the divinity within others, to experience the divinity when we are together as communities and groups, and to cherish and to shepherd and to steward the divinity of nature and the environment. But it's all driven by the desire to know something that we cannot know, that is impossible because God is inaccessible. And therefore, there is an intermediary degree of godliness that is accessible to us to help us fulfill this purpose. And this degree is known as the divine manifestation or the manifestations of God. And the divine manifestation is a degree of expression of godliness that for 60, 70, 80 years inhabits the temple of a physical being. And therefore, we see these as historical figures, the founders of different religions. But according to Baha'u'llah's theology, the divine manifestations are not simply really smart people who happen to come at the right time and the right place to orchestrate social and political and moral change. They are a different creature altogether, even though they also occupy a physical temple. Their spiritual substance is of a completely different degree. And if you see that the divine manifestation is this intermediary level between God and down here, the level of humanity and the physical universe. So the metaphor I like to give people is that using the metaphor of electricity, that if God is like a power plant that generates a massive amount of electricity that's very, very high voltage, and we are appliances, a light bulb, a toaster oven, whatever it might be, you cannot plug in an appliance directly into this high voltage electricity. If you do, you will simply burn up the appliance. And Baha'u'lláh says basically the same thing. He says direct intercourse between the creatures and the creator, we would cease to exist. And in electricity, there's a step-down transformer that takes this super high voltage electricity and reduces it to a degree that we as appliances can actually draw upon and be illuminated by. And that is the function of a divine manifestation, is to transmit a certain degree of divinity that we can actually connect with and be illuminated by. And so in religious history, this lower dose electricity is called divine grace or the Holy Spirit or other things. And there are various names for this higher voltage electricity that's actually part of a completely different presentation. But the point is that the divine manifestation occupies a very particular role and function in the cosmic structure of the spiritual world. They're not just smart people who bring about a social change in the world. And Baha'is have a symbol that encapsulates this relationship of the levels of divinity that is often part of our jewelry and some of our architecture. So here we have the Shrine of the Bab, where this summary of our theology is embedded in the architecture. And these are examples of jewelry that Baha'is might wear that carry that reminder of our place in the universe. And so that is the manifestations of God. And from that, because all of these divine manifestations are of the same substance, therefore all the religions are really essentially unified in purpose. And Baha'u'lláh explains that the core spiritual essence is essentially unchanging. It might get amplified, it might get rephrased, but it's essentially the same. And that with each one that comes, there's a change in the outward secondary teachings, but there's a fundamental oneness to all of these religions, and that they come throughout history, and that in fact, the appearance of the divine manifestations, according to Baha'u'llah's teachings, is the primary impulse of the progress of civilization, because these divine manifestations release a spiritual energy that actually inspires the arts, the sciences, literature, political change, and all kinds of things. And then the actual teachings of these great teachers help to shape the moral and social structures that define that next stage in human civilization. And so the concept of progressive revelation is built into Baha'u'llah's teachings when he explains that the dose and the intensity of the divine energy that is coming to the world from one prophet to the next is increasing from one era to the next. And the social codes are molded and remolded and broken apart and rebuilt into something new to house the higher intensity of the spiritual energy, as well as to accommodate the societal changes that have happened. And as a result, humanity's, the progressive revelation of the religions is tied with humanity's social and spiritual evolution. That as a result of the successive missions of all of these great teachers and the energy they bring into the world and the teachings that they bring to the world, humanity has not only evolved spiritually over the millennia, but we have established higher and higher levels of unity in the world, from unity of family and clan to unity of tribe and city-state and to national unity. And now we happen to be at the time where we have entered a new stage in our social and spiritual evolution, our maturity, our coming of age as a planet, where the global identity of all of humanity is the next developmental stage for us. And the principle to be embraced is the acknowledgement of our fundamental oneness as human beings. And what is oneness? Oneness has two parts. Our unity, that regardless of our differences, there are things we all have in common. And then that allows us to appreciate our diversity. And that Baha'u'lláh says that he is simply the latest in this never-ending succession who happens to come at this turning point in human history. So these are some of the core fundamental verities that tie in the connection of all the religions with what Baha'u'llah's message and claims are. And this is just something I found on a website to sort of show that idea of never-ending progress. And of course, these are only the faith traditions that, may be acknowledged by a certain segment of the world. We definitely have indication that there have been more divine manifestations in the human story than is known to human history or that has been acknowledged by those in power. And so Baha'u'lláh, speaks of the significance of this day and the importance of his appearance. And I have many more slides in this slide set than can actually be looked at. So I will just click them, and you can always go back to the recording and pause and read. So here are some passages from the writings of Baha'u'lláh that speak to the culmination of this day. Okay, so now we can talk to some of these distinguishing features and claims of Baha'u'lláh and his revelation. So in my own personal study of Baha'i history and the Baha'i writings, I have found, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And these are just the 13 I came across. So we'll quickly go through most of them. We'll start here. Baha'u'lláh clearly announces that he is one of these divine manifestations. And what that specifically means is that this divine spirit, this divine power that is in the universe is emanating from his being, and his teachings define the laws that regulate how this spiritual energy operate. And therefore, the spirit and the words of Baha'u'lláh are a doorway to divine fulfillment, to spiritual growth. Just like a Christian would view Jesus as someone they can have a personal relationship with for their personal growth, Baha'u'lláh is also speaking in a very similar way, that loving him, having a devotional connection with him, praying to him, reading his words, following his teachings is a powerful catalyst of fulfillment of our best humanity, of our spiritual growth. So I'll read some of these short ones. Deliver your souls, O people, from the bondage of self, and purify them from all attachment to anything besides me. Remembrance of me cleanseth all things from defilement, could ye but perceive it. And here are a handful from the hidden words that speak to how having this connection with God through his divine manifestation is a means of bringing this divine spirit and grace and upliftment to our lives. And here's one passage that I just love. It's from Tablets of Baha'u'lláh, and he says regarding himself, I am the sun of wisdom and the ocean of knowledge. I cheer the faint and revive the dead. I am the guiding light that illumineth the way. I am the royal falcon on the arm of the Almighty. I unfold the drooping wings of every broken bird and started on its flight. And he is speaking to the psychological impact that devotion to him can have on an individual, among many other things. So another distinguishing feature, which is not unique to the Baha'i revelation, but not other religions don't really talk about it, but it's there, which is that the manifestation of God, when they come to the world, they release this energy that inspires change and progress. And it moves people who are not even aware that they are being inspired by this energy. I remember when I was in college, there was this song by Sting where it was called Love is the Seventh Wave. And he would talk about this wave that was rising, from the ocean and sweeping over the lands, and no one can withstand it. And to me, it was a secular description of this spiritual wave that is moving humanity despite itself in a certain direction. And this is a phenomenon that has happened with every divine manifestation. And here are some of the things that can be found in the writings. Baha'u'lláh says, through the movement of our pen of glory, we have, at the bidding of the omnipotent ordainer, breathed a new life into every human frame and instilled into every word a fresh potency. All created things proclaim the evidences of this worldwide regeneration. The counsels which the pen of this wronged one hath revealed constitute the supreme animating power for the advancement of the world and the exaltation of its peoples. And here is something from Shoghi Effendi in the introduction to the Dawnbreakers. He says, the humanitarian and spiritual principles enunciated decades ago in the darkest East by Baha'u'lláh and molded by him into a coherent scheme are one after the other being taken by a world unconscious of their source as the marks of progressive civilization. And the sense that mankind has broken with the past and that the old guidance will not carry it through the emergencies of the present has filled with uncertainty and dismay all thoughtful men, save those who have learned to find in the story of Baha'u'lláh the meaning of all the prodigies and portents of our time. And here is something that the House of Justice wrote in its statement on peace to the people of the world. An urge towards unity, like a spiritual springtime, struggles to express itself through countless international congresses that bring together people from a vast array of disciplines. It motivates appeals for international projects involving children and youth. Indeed, it is the real source of the remarkable movement toward ecumenism by which members of historically antagonistic religions and sects seem irresistibly drawn towards one another. Together with the opposing tendency to warfare and self-aggrandizement against which it ceaselessly struggles, the drive towards world unity is one of the dominant, pervasive features of life on the planet during the closing years of the 20th century. The imminent realization of this age-old dream of peace is now, by virtue of the transforming effects of Baha'u'llah's revelation, invested with the force of divine authority. So this is not just a philosophical movement. This is a mystical explosion that happens once every millennium. And it's happened again in our recent past. And it's propelling humanity to figure out new things. Okay, so the union of humanity. Baha'u'lláh basically says that if there is not unity, if there is not oneness of humanity, not just as an ideal, but as an operational way of living, the world is going to ultimately be a catastrophe. And that unity cannot happen if there is not justice. That is clear. It's not just about, let's all just hold hands and say we love each other. Like, there has to be truth and justice. Otherwise, unity will die on the vine. The other thing that Baha'u'lláh says is that the only way to really get everybody to be united is for them to identify something that they all consider sacred. So one common sacred allegiance. And so Baha'u'lláh speaks of the importance of this, that which the Lord hath ordained as the sovereign remedy and mightiest instrument for the healing of all the world is the union of all its peoples in one universal cause, one common faith. This can in no wise be achieved except through the power of a skilled and all-powerful and inspired physician. Now, some people might be inclined to automatically think that what the Baha'is are saying is that the whole world should become Baha'i in order to survive. That is not necessarily what Baha'u'lláh is saying. He is saying that humanity must identify a set of sacred beliefs that everyone can buy into. And he even answered a question by one follower wherein Baha'u'lláh predicted that the world will go through a period where they recognize that they got to throw out all religion because religious prejudice is the greatest source of destruction in the world, that the world will live without religion for a while, and then the world will realize they need to have a new understanding of what true religion is and figure out what that is for all of humanity. So that is a process that we are nowhere near witnessing. But Baha'u'lláh says it is ultimately at the heart of unifying everyone, is that no matter what your background, you all cherish the same sacred things. Now, Baha'u'lláh also says, well, God knew this from the beginning, that this is what humanity would need. So God embedded in every past religion what everyone would find sacred in the end days, which is the idea that there will be someone that everybody is waiting for, that there will be a promised one, that there will be a fulfillment of prophecy, that everybody will be able to find their connection to the new way of looking at things. And Baha'u'lláh clearly announces that this is that time. And he says, the revelation which from time immemorial hath been acclaimed as the purpose and promise of all the prophets of God, and the most cherished desire of his messengers, hath now, by virtue of the pervasive will of the Almighty, and at his irresistible bidding, been revealed unto men. The advent of such a revelation hath been heralded in all the sacred scriptures. And Abdu'l-Baha, Baha'u'llah's son, elaborates on this idea. The promised one of all the world's peoples hath now been made manifest. For each and every people and every religion await a promised one. And Baha'u'lláh is that one who is awaited by all. And therefore, the cause of Baha'u'lláh will bring about the oneness of mankind, and the tabernacle of unity will be upraised on the heights of the world, and the banners of the universality of all humankind will be unfurled on the peaks of the earth. And so, what does it mean, the promised one? Well, let's look at it from each religion's point of view. Every religion is expecting someone, and each religion has different terms or names they've given to this promised one. And these are just a few examples. Okay, so this one, I'm only going to refer you to it. There are a variety of signs that surrounded Baha'u'llah's appearance that his son Abdu'l-Baha, in a letter, explained are some of the signs of the stupendous nature of Baha'u'llah's arrival. And it's in a tablet from the selections from the writings of Abdu'l-Baha, and I've only put an excerpt of it here. But of course, you can go to the full quote. So it's these and these. More.
Dr. Etemad, would it be possible for you at least to read one section of it, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. We'll go to the third one down, and I'll take a few from each slide. Among his signs is his being manifest, being seen by all, standing as his own proof, and his presence among witnesses in every region, among peoples who fell upon him even as wolves and compassed him about from every side. Among his signs is his withstanding powerful nations and all-conquering states, and a host of enemies thirsting for his blood, intent at every moment upon his ruin, wheresoever he might be. Verily, this is a matter deserving the scrutiny of those who ponder the signs and tokens of God. Another of his signs is the marvel of his discourse, the eloquence of his utterance, the rapidity with which his writings were revealed, his words of wisdom, his verses, his epistles, his communes, his unfolding of the Quran, both the abstruse verses thereof and the clear. By thy very life, this thing is plain as day to whoever will regard it with the eye of justice. Okay, there's so many, it's just sort of, it's going to blow my brain out. So that gives you a taste, though. Okay, so another one which we're really not going to cover, but deserves at least mentioning, is this idea that Baha'u'lláh is not only the latest manifestation in a never-ending succession of manifestations, but he also serves another function as what is known as a universal manifestation, who has come in the most great name. And a lot of this is related to the theology that not only is found in the Baha'i teachings, but is also embedded in the theology of other religions. So, for example, the concept of this most great spirit being the intermediary between God and the manifestation, in Jewish literature, this most great spirit is referred to as Jehovah or the Father. And so the coming in the glory of the Father or the final appearance of Jehovah is part of an anticipation that has existed since the earliest religions, and that every one of the prophets that received a revelation from this energy received it at a certain degree because of progressive revelation. But in this day and age, because of what humanity's needs are, the degree of this expression of the most great spirit to Mirza Hossein Ali, the founder of the Baha'i faith, it was full. It was a full dose. And this only happens once every 500,000 years, according to the Baha'i teachings. And so that's a different function than being the latest manifestation of God. And it has nothing to do with Mirza Hossein Ali being better or worse or different. It's just a function, but it's a very important thing. And here's just a few quotes that give a little clue to that. Behold how the manifold grace of God, which is being showered from the clouds of divine glory, hath in this day encompassed the world. For whereas in days past every lover besought and searched after his beloved, it is the beloved himself who now is calling his lovers and is inviting them to attain his presence. Take heed lest ye forfeit so precious a favor. Beware lest ye belittle so remarkable a token of his grace. And here is another one. In the past, the divines were perplexed over this question. What is that word which the Ga'em will pronounce, whereby the leaders of religion are put to flight? Say that word is now made manifest, and that blessed, that hidden, that concealed and treasured word is this: he hath now appeared in the raiment of I. Meaning the prophet of this time is representing the full presence of the divine that was anticipated by all of the great prophets of the past. And a lot of this also has to do with the concept of the hidden mystery and the treasured symbol that both Islam and Babi and Baha'i teachings talk about being fulfilled. So this is a whole other, in fact, this is such a large subject that in consultation with voters, it was determined it was just too long of a topic for this fireside, because it's really about a 90-minute lecture just to get all of the basic ideas out. So I'm trying to figure out a way to record this and put it out there, because frankly, for me, I just sort of want to jump out of my body and fly into the sky when I think about this stuff. So I'm going to find a way to share it. But I wanted to at least mention it, even though we couldn't cover it in detail, that this is a mind-blowing, distinguishing claim of the Baha'i revelation. So, okay, all of these spiritual things have now been put out there. Baha'u'lláh is surrounded and exudes all of these spiritual potencies. But now let's get a little practical. Baha'u'lláh actually did break it down a little bit and say, here are some of the principles that need to be recognized, acclaimed, and established in the workings of society in order to change the atmosphere of humanity so that we can not only survive, but thrive. And these are often what Baha'is will refer to as the 12 principles or the 10 principles or whatever. And here's a partial list of some of those. Many of these principles were elaborated in much more detail by Abdu'l-Baha, but the essence of most of them were actually found somewhere in Baha'u'llah's writings, particularly in his messages to some of the leaders of the world. This is an excerpt from a letter to the kings of the earth. And here he talks about the need for collective security and the establishment of a peace treaty, an international peace treaty. Okay, another very important thing. When Baha'u'lláh first announced himself as the founder of a new faith, because for many years he was disguising himself as a disciple of the Bab. But when he finally determined that the time was right for him to announce that he was in fact the one the Bab was preparing everyone for, the first thing he said after he announced that I am this divine manifestation is no holy war. It was the first thing he said. There were 3 things he announced on that day. This was the first thing. The use of force was never to be used to either defend or promote his faith. Now, that's not to be confused with the use of force for defense when it's not your faith at stake. If you're just defending your property or your family in a generic way, that's not under this prohibition. That's a separate set of principles. But force is not to be used specifically to defend or promote his faith, not even psychological force. Proselytizing is not the Baha'i way of sharing. And frankly, I tell people who are not Baha'i, listen, if you find a Baha'i is being too forceful, you'd call them out on it and tell them that they're breaking their own teachings, that they're not being a very good Baha'i by like pressuring you. Like, it's about sharing and let it be what it is. So Baha'u'lláh redefines what it means to promote his teachings. And he says, first of all, it is primarily through the example of your refined character, and then your refined utterance, and then the way you speak and engage with wisdom. And he took the idea of the sword and he turned it into a metaphor. And in many places, he refers to the sword of inner meaning, the sword of understanding or wisdom, of explanation or utterance or character. So yes, fight the war, fight the battle, but it's a metaphoric battle. And so, I did my own research on all of the different, imagery of, what is the battle? What is the field of battle? Who is the enemy? There are no people who are enemies. It's just our own lower nature and the destructive and ignorant attitudes that are in the world. And, armor is the armor of faith, the steed of knowledge, the shield of obedience, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea that the sword is about how we behave, how we talk, and how we are. And what we're capturing is, not a battle of land, but of hearts, and not of domination, but of liberation of hearts. And there's a beautiful passage from the writings of Bahá'u'lláh where he talks about what victory means. And I'm going to read these two slides. That which God, glorified be his name, hath desired for himself is the hearts of his servants, which are the treasuries of his love and remembrance, and the repositories of his knowledge and wisdom. It hath ever been the wish of the eternal King to cleanse the hearts of his servants from the things of the world and all that pertaineth thereunto, that they may be made worthy recipients of the effulgent splendors of him who is the King of all names. What he's saying is that God wants us to purify our hearts so we can detect that divine grace that is actually pulsating within us. Wherefore must no stranger be allowed in the city of the heart, that the incomparable friend may enter his abode. It followeth, therefore, that rendering assistance unto God in this day doth not and shall never consist in contending or disputing with any soul. Nay, rather, what is preferable in the sight of God is that the cities of men's hearts, which are ruled by the hosts of self and passion, should be subdued by the swords of utterance, of wisdom, and of understanding. Thus, whoso seeketh to assist God must, before all else, conquer with the sword of inner meaning and explanation the city of his own heart, and guard it from the remembrance of all save God, and only then set out to subdue the city of the hearts of others. So he clearly, it's like Baha'u'lláh did an Aikido move. Aikido is a type of martial art where you take the violent force of the opponent and you redirect it. He took the full force of the military model of swordsmanship and he redirected it into this amazing understanding of self-mastery. So, and Baha'u'lláh led the way by promoting and proclaiming himself to whoever he could, even to the highest leaders of Europe, America, and Asia at the time, and the Middle East part of Asia. And we refer to it as his proclamation. And it was over the course of several years that Baha'u'lláh wrote a variety of letters that were delivered to different leaders, Napoleon and others. And actually, here are the among the biggest leaders of the time: Pope Pius IX, the Tsar of Russia, the Shah of Persia, the Kaiser Wilhelm, Sultan Abdulaziz of the Ottoman Empire, Queen Victoria, Franz Joseph, and Napoleon III. And in these, Baha'u'lláh is very open and very bold. And he is announcing his claim not only as a divine manifestation, but as the promised one of that monarch's particular faith. And he proposes some of these social principles, and he recommends to the European leaders to like figure out a way to avoid basically what ended up becoming World War I. And the challenge for people to examine his cause. And there are several books where these tablets are found. The earliest publication is called The Proclamation of Bahá'u'lláh. It's a selection of some of them before everything was translated. But they are all now found in the Summons of the Lord of Hosts, which is a large publication. And there's a book called The Promised Day Is Come, written by Shogi Effendi, wherein he explains the results of human history, like what happened as a result of the leaders rejecting Baha'u'llah's proclamation. And he basically ties the rejection of Baha'u'llah's proclamation to the collapse of the caliphate, the collapse of the Persian Empire, everything that led to World War I and even to World War II. And it's a brilliant book. And here, again, can't read them, but here's an example of a tablet that he wrote that is addressed to the monarchs of the world in general. And they're very bold. Ye are but vassals, O kings of the earth. What prisoner in Palestine of the Ottoman Empire writes to the kings and say, you're servants, you're either a lunatic or you're from God? I mean, it's one or the other. And he sort of draws the line, like, check this out. Like, either I'm crazy or I'm not. Examine our cause, he says. O King of Paris. He wrote to Napoleon, and he basically offered that if you follow these principles, you will be the instrument for the unification of Europe. And basically Napoleon said, well, if this man is God, then I'm two gods. And then Baha'u'lláh basically said, your empire is going to fall within a certain amount of time, and it happened. And this is what part of what he wrote to the republics and presidents of North America, and to religious leaders in general, and to the Pope of the time, just as an example of his proclamation. Okay. Shogi Effendi refers to Baha'u'llah's covenant as one of the most distinguishing features of Baha'u'llah's revelation. It is a system of two things. It is a system of succession after Baha'u'llah passes, but it's also a system of governance. And it is too complicated to talk about. Again, it deserves its own thing. But Baha'is use it as its administrative system of religious administration. But clearly, the Baha'i writings refer to it as a template of governance to be modeled in the world. Shogi Effendi refers to it as a nucleus, as the nucleus of the new way that the order of the world is going to happen. And it actually offers a way of providing intelligent critique of world events and political screw-ups in our world. And Baha'u'llah was the first to point out to this ruler or that, you screwed up when you did this. So political non-involvement doesn't mean the Baha'is don't call out our leaders when they do something that's a screw-up, where the reference point is our teachings, not a political platform. And we as Baha'is still have to figure out what's the difference between speaking to our leadership and not being partisan politics. We've mashed it all together and we've avoided everything, but we will learn how, because Baha'u'llah did it, the Bab did it, Abdul Baha did it, Shogi Effendi did it, and even the House of Justice. When the House of Justice writes a letter to the Baha'is of Iran, you can bet they know that every leader of the Iranian government is reading it, and they articulate very concrete critiques of the Iranian government's behavior. So this is something we need to start thinking about, as we've been given a template for doing that. And the proclamation of Baha'u'llah is in fact our example. So again, there's much more than we can talk about here with regards to the covenant. And but there are some, there are some things where the writings refer to how the administrative order and the covenant are this channel for divine energy to pour into the world at large. So here's one quote by the Guardian. Here's another one by the Guardian. And here, the Universal House of Justice explains to us that the more the Baha'i system is built and practiced, it will become a magnet of spiritual energy that will accelerate the changes in the world at large.
Could you kindly read that, Dr.
Sure.
Yeah.
Even though the establishment of the lesser peace is not dependent on any Baha'i plan or action, and although it will not represent the ultimate goal humanity is destined to reach in the Golden Age, our community has a responsibility to lend spiritual impetus to the processes towards that peace. The need at this exact time is to so intensify our efforts in building the Baha'i system that we will attract the confirmations of Baha'u'lláh and thus invoke a spiritual atmosphere that will accrue to the quickening of these processes. And then this is the statement from Baha'u'lláh about this system. The world's equilibrium hath been upset through the vibrating influence of this most great, this new world order. Mankind's ordered life hath been revolutionized through the agency of this unique, this wondrous system, the like of which mortal eyes have never witnessed. And then these last couple are part of just a quick sort of ending that I'd like to share. I've given this presentation many times, and one of the things that people come up with as a question is sort of like, do you guys pray? Are you spiritual at all? Because I happen to talk sometimes in a very intellectual academic language. But the bottom line is that the core of Baha'u'llah's revelation is spiritual. That there's a spiritual force in the universe, and we are all droplets of spiritual energy that want to connect with that force. And everything is about how to do that and how to express that in our lives and in the workings of the world. And here is a quote that speaks to that. This is not a cause which may be made a plaything for your idle fancies, nor is it a field for the foolish and faint of heart. By God, this is the arena of insight and detachment, of vision and upliftment, where none may spur on their chargers save the valiant horsemen of the merciful, who have severed all attachment to the world of being. These truly are they that render God victorious on earth and are the dawning places of his sovereign might amidst mankind. So I'm going to go to the next thing first, which is that Baha'u'lláh issues a challenge. He's like, try it, you'll like it. If you don't like it, throw it away. Basically, Baha'u'llah's challenging people to test it out, examine it, test it out, and see if it makes a difference in your life. And don't reject it because your reflex is to reject it. And don't accept it because your reflex is to accept it. Be thoughtful. Check it out. Toss it out if you don't want it. Hang on to it if you want it, basically. And here is an example of how the Universal House of Justice expressed this invitation in the peace statement that was, distributed to people and leaders of the world. The experience of the Baha'i community may be seen as an example of this enlarging unity. It is a community of some 3 to 4 million people. This was back in 1985. Drawn from many nations, cultures, classes, and creeds, engaged in a wide range of activities, serving the spiritual, social, and economic needs of people of many lands. It is a single social organism, representative of the diversity of the human family, conducting its affairs through a system of commonly accepted consultative principles and cherishing equally all the great outpourings of divine guidance in human history. Its existence is yet another convincing proof of the practicality of its founder's vision of a united world, another evidence that humanity can live as one global society, equal to whatever challenges its coming of age may entail. If the Baha'i experience can contribute in whatever measure to reinforcing hope in the unity of the human race, we are happy to offer it as a model for study. It's such a beautiful example on how the Baha'i teachings about sharing the Baha'i teachings is about sharing and checking it out, not like any other faith, and Baha'is come from all faith backgrounds. So a lot of Baha'is are still sharing the Baha'i faith in the wrong way because we're still all learning. And that's fine. We just need to evolve. But I wanted to end with this last thing. The example and effect of Baha'u'llah's life and his work and his teachings and his example and his suffering especially. And for some people, this may resonate more. For example, Baha'u'llah's suffering might resonate more with Christians who value the sacrifice of Jesus, or a Shia Muslim who is very focused on the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. So whereas it might be more the example of his living life that might inspire someone else, but it's all there for examination. And here's what Baha'u'llah says, referring to himself as the ancient beauty. The ancient beauty hath consented to be bound with chains, that mankind may be released from its bondage, and hath accepted to be made a prisoner within this most mighty stronghold, that the whole world may attain unto true liberty. He hath drained to its dregs the cup of sorrow, that all the peoples of the earth may attain unto abiding joy and be filled with gladness. That's just a taste. Another quote is the Western historian Edward Granville Brown, when he met Baha'u'llah, he put in his journal a description of his encounter. And this is just a brief piece of that. The face of him on whom I gazed, I can never forget, though I cannot describe it. Those piercing eyes seemed to read one's very soul. Power and authority sat on that ample brow. No need to ask in whose presence I stood, as I bowed myself before one who is the object of a devotion and love which kings might envy and emperors sigh for in vain. And the last thing I'm going to share is something that one of Baha'u'llah's relatives said to his own son. This relative, Mirza Agha Khan of Noor, ended up becoming the prime minister of Iran at one point. But he was a distant cousin of Baha'u'llah. And when Baha'u'llah's father died, Baha'u'llah inherited many of the roles and functions of his father. And Mirza Agha Khan's son asks his own father, is Mirza Hussein Ali worthy of his father? And this is the answer that he gives to his son about Baha'u'llah. My son, do you really believe him to be an unworthy son of his father? All that either of us can hope to achieve is but a fleeting and precarious allegiance, which will vanish as soon as our days are ended. Our mortal life can never be free from the vicissitudes that beset the path of earthly ambition. Should we even succeed in ensuring in our lifetime the honor of our name, who can tell whether after our death calumny may not stain our memory and undo the work we have achieved? Even those who, while we are living, honor us with their lips, would in their hearts condemn and vilify us were we for but one moment to fail to promote their interests. Not so, however, with Baha'u'lláh. Unlike the great ones of the earth, whatever be their race or rank, he is the object of a love and devotion such as time cannot dim, nor enemy destroy. His sovereignty, the shadows of death can never obscure, nor the tongue of the slanderer undermine. Such is the sway of his influence that no one among his lovers dare in the stillness of night evoke the memory of the faintest desire that could even remotely be construed as contrary to his wish. Such lovers will greatly increase in number. The love they bear him will never grow less and will be transmitted from generation to generation until the world shall have been suffused with its glory. Thank you for letting me go over a little bit with the time. I appreciate your patience. So I'm going to stop the sharing.
What an uplifting, inspiring, and profound talk. Dr. Etemad, thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it. They say that Persians exaggerate, but I could go ahead and give you 5 more minutes of my thankful gestures and comments, and it will not be exaggerating. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you. These verities are so exciting that it's really all about that. It's all about sharing and thinking about it with each other and getting excited. So thank you for the opportunity.
It's interesting that you're thanking me instead of me thanking you days after days. I would like to ask friends, it's 8:20. If there are any questions, please go ahead, ask your questions. I have a long question in chat that in due time I can read. Is
Okay.
there any questions, friends?
Sorry, my dear Firuzjan, I cannot put my hand up. I just reached home with my iPad. Just I want to say, I was listening to him in the train, in the bus. I reached home, I turn on my iPad, and the people looking me in the train. I said, I'm crazy. I was jumping. You know, the way you talk, you was excited with the passion. Beloved Guardians said with the audacity. And Baha'u'lláh said, the brave mention my name. This is really moved me. I am very thankful. Thank you so much. Already Firuzjan said. But my only suggestion, take every day the oregano oil, every day your lifetime. Your immune will build it and you won't cough. Okay. Allah Akbar.
Oregano oil? Did you say oregano oil?
Yeah. Every day. Yes.
Do I take it orally or rub it on my neck? How do I do it?
No, drink it. Every day build your immune system. You don't cough, you don't get catch cold.
I will definitely try it. Thank you.
Allah Akbar.
Allah Akbar.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, or do you want me to read? I'm sorry, I was expecting my daughter after 6 months, so I had to open the door. I apologize.
Okay.
Why don't I read for you the question
Sure.
in the chat? I have a question, but I have no mic. Can you read this for me? Despite rapid advancement in genetic engineering, AI, quantum computing, and other scientific fields, why does humanity's spiritual growth seem stagnant, mirroring the divisions and prejudice of the past? Religions aimed to enlighten and unite us, yet religious conflict and biases persist. It appears humanity has regressed rather than progressed. The term religion, in quotation mark, now repels many. How can the Baha'i faith reverse this trend and revitalize spirituality, fostering global unity, tolerance, and understanding? What is the timeline that this will happen, or will humanity repeat the same mistakes throughout centuries to come?
Oh my goodness. I need to go get a cup of coffee before I attempt this. No, but actually, I'm just going to share my thoughts about this. I don't know if it's technically an answer. You actually asked several questions on several layers. And I think by addressing the primal layer, the other layers will get addressed. And I think the primal layer is that why is there this spiritual atrophy or stagnation despite technical and scientific and material progress? And I think it has to do with we are three parts. We are soul, mind, body. Our physical self is very concrete. You can touch it. It's got the senses. It's very finite and contained. Even our minds, psychologically, we can relate with feelings. We can relate with thoughts. We can even relate with our impulses and motivations. They're very relatable. The body wants to rest. It's part of the physical universe. It seeks the lowest energy state. The mind wants to maintain status quo. It doesn't want to go up or down or left or right. It just wants to stay right here. That's the nature of it. The soul, by definition, is abstract. It's bigger. It's deeper than what a thought or a feeling can actually contain. It's not something that's detectable by the physical senses. It is detectable, but detection doesn't come without work. And we're lazy. We don't want to do the work to step away from our physical senses, step away from our psychological frame of reference to try to experience something that is something else. On top of that, the soul is expansive. It doesn't want to go to the lowest energy state. It doesn't want to stay where it is. It wants to expand. It wants to grow. And so we've got two parts of ourselves that are constantly resisting and sabotaging the effort to get in touch with that part of us that will give us a whole different type of thought and a whole different type of feeling. So we're just so conditioned to think and do and feel and talk and act on the things that are easy to grasp. So we do more science, we do more tech, we do more sex, we have more drugs, we do all of that stuff more, and we give less and less attention to something that's just so freaking weird and scary until we get in it and become comfortable with it. It's like you don't know what it's like to be in the swimming pool until you finally jump in. You don't have any frame of reference. So I think that sounds like an oversimplification, but when you think about everybody has a busy life, everybody has a stressful life, everybody has a this and that and this and that, that what we really do is we put it to the side, we put it to the side, we put it to the side because I got to take care of this, I got to take care of that, I got to take care of that. And what we don't realize is that if we actually give attention to this higher self, we might become more efficient, more effective, better problem solvers. So all of those other practical details, we actually might find a new way to solve them and address them and manage them. But that's not what our bodies and minds are telling us. They're actually getting in the way of that. Now you think about everyone who's busy, and then you think about people who are having a job where their egos are going to get in the way. And then you think about every job and politicians and all of that, then it's very easy just to ignore the part of us that is noble, that is expansive, that is creative, that is connecting, that is peace-inducing, that will have us look at things differently. And who are the people who probably do this the most, who ignore it the most? The leaders of religions. Most of them are not very spiritual. The track record of religious leadership is horrible. And this is not my opinion. Baha'u'llah's judgment on religious leadership is quite severe, not only throughout history, like in the Book of Certitude, but he was very severe in his verdict on the religious leadership of his time, as was Abdu'l-Baha and Shoghi Effendi, and even the Universal House of Justice. They very explicitly blame religious leadership in the peace statement for the distortion of religion. But that distortion of religion comes from the lack of true spiritual nature of religious leadership themselves. So that's where the distortion of religion comes from. And then the distortion of religion is the cause of the decline of the reputation of religion. Of course, I remember I was at a Baha'i thing and, I wanted to sing the John Lennon song, Imagine. And, I had done it in other places, and some of the Baha'is got their feathers ruffled because John Lennon says, and no religion too. So this time I said, listen, John Lennon says no religion too, but so does Abdu'l-Baha. He says, if a religion is a cause of this, this, and this, it's better to be without it. I'm singing about that kind of religion I want nothing to do with. So like a Baha'i wants nothing to do with old-time religion. So we need to see it for what it is. It's part of the trash. It's part of humanity's history of either doing things immaturely when we were younger and it was good for then, but it's not good for now, or it was never good and it should have been trashed centuries ago. So that is part of it. And the redefinition of religion is going to come in a long time. I mean, everything that I've ever read is that it's certainly not going to be in our lifetime. This is a process because we are having to pull out the weeds of so many misunderstandings that are so deeply rooted in the psyche of every culture. That's not something that happens in 2 or 3 generations. It's going to take centuries to really root this out. That was a timeline. I think I sort of touched on most of those. I hope so.
It was a very, very interesting question, friend.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm Mitchell. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Gordon, is this you?
Yes. Why don't I see more of the Earth flag in the Baha'i community? You would think that's the symbol of every Baha'i, but I don't see the Earth flag in the Baha'i community. Communism.
Mr. Gordon, I wish you raised your hand because Mr. Taherzadeh is before you. Would you kindly raise your hand so we, after Mr. Okay, that's fine. So we now know. Thank you. I apologize.
I have an Earth flag.
That's
think the
fine.
Earth flag is basically the symbol of the Baha'is at this moment, and they should see it used.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Doctor, yes. Mr. Taherzadeh, go ahead, please.
No, let's hear from Mr. Gordon. Let him go ahead. I'll go after him. Thank you.
Okay, friends.
Yeah, I made my point. I just wanted
Thank you.
to see the Earth flag more in the Baha'i community. I have one outside my house, and I think it's the symbol of the Baha'is, and we should use.
Thank
What does
you.
it look like?
It's the flag of the Earth in the center, and the best one has it shows the continents. You'll have Africa, the Middle East, but just ask anybody who sells flags that you want a Baha'i flag flown, and you can put one in outside your house. You can put one outside the Baha'i community here in Philadelphia. But it's a gift. The Earth flag is a gift, and we need to use it.
My guess for why there is no flag at all, Earth or otherwise, is probably this. I remember going on pilgrimage to Israel, and part of our pilgrim group, we learned that on every corner of the Shrine of the Bab and on certain panels of the marble architecture, there are panels with Arabic writings of the Bab that have been made that would be in the future mounted on the Shrine of the Bab to complete it. And it was raised that somebody asked our pilgrim guide, well, why are those things not on the Shrine of the Bab now? And the basic answer was, in the Holy Land in the 21st century, anything that is inscribed with a lot of Arabic has the risk of being understood or misconstrued as representing a particular entity or ideology or whatever, and that it just wasn't time. My guess would be it's a similar logic, that a flag represents a political reality in most people's minds. It represents a polity that has a certain type of temporal influence in the world, and that because that is not the current status of the Baha'i world, to have a flag of any sort is a mismatch for the current developmental stage of the Baha'i world in relation to the world at large. So I think I respect your opinion, but from my understanding, that would be only an opinion. There's nothing in the writings that would substantiate either even the necessity of that in general, and certainly not at this particular stage in the development of the Baha'i world. But your point is taken. Hold on. Your point is taken. I think it's important to honor that other people have questions, especially because they actually had their hands up prior to you. If you want to make hold on.
Yeah, I just want to.
If you want to make further points, I think you can wait until other people have had a chance to raise their questions.
Mr. Gordon, thank you very much for sharing your ideas with us. Let us ask others, and then we will continue. Thank you for showing it. I appreciate it. Mr. Taherzadeh, now that you're so wonderful, why don't we ask Aniela to ask her question first, as ladies first, and then we will go back to you. Friends, please be short. It's about 20 to 9. I appreciate it. Mr. Gordon, we saw that. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Daniela.
It's a beautiful picture of the Earth from space. Thank you, sir. You know, what occurs to me about the question that was in the chat is that if we're not allowed to use any kind of oppression to share that, oh my gosh, there's only one God, there's only one ever unfolding religion, it has chapters, it's the light of lights for the education of humanity, and there's only one humanity. That ours is not, it's a steep climb when you know that we cannot use any force that's seen on the earth till now that has a destructive tendency, that has a shaming tendency, that might repel hearts, that in fact our work, the work of the embodiment of justice and love, requires hearts to meet each other in a most intimate way. And then these elevated conversations begin to have clarity. And I would say that anyone who is in love with the idea of the oneness of humanity is is part of this building a new way forward, and that our highest aspiration is service. Are we going to stumble and make mistakes? Sure, that's part of it. I pick you up, you pick me up, and we learn together. So if there's no hierarchy, if there's no status seeking, if the highest embodiment of power is service, because power is redefined in this faith, then, you know, it will be, to the whoever wrote this question in the chat, it will be painstakingly different, where egos are continually subdued and love and justice come to the front and center, and we will learn. We will learn, especially now at this most tender moment in US, more than ever, the just, the peacemakers, the builders must step forward and take each other's hands.
I always love listening to what you have to say, Agnella. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you. Mr. Taherzadeh, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have a feeling that in most Baha'i circles, there is no knowledge of of what you're calling the most great spirit. I mean, in most Baha'i circles, there's familiarity with the Holy Spirit.
Correct.
But sometimes it's completely new that the existence and the mention of the most Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And so to some, it's a new revelation. It's a new entity that they were not aware of.
Absolutely.
And then secondly, the use, again, in Baha'i circles, I think we have a very excellent what's this symbol, the one you mentioned, that matches the cosmology, the Baha'i cosmology.
Right.
That's a very useful understanding of the whole picture of the Baha'i view of existence itself. And in many Baha'i circles, we are not using that. So we keep stumbling here, we're wavering this way, that way, we're trying to explain some things, but that symbol, which I believe Abdul Baha himself designed, and the guardian of the cause of God placed on every corner of the shrine, of the superstructure of the shrine of the Bab.
Right.
It's a very useful and direct, I mean, it's a schematic. I mean, we're living in the world, in the age of schematics. That completely encapsulates, as you mentioned, the whole Baha'i cosmology.
Yes.
And then there is the existence of the most Holy Spirit. If you could emphasize some of that, so that it becomes more familiar to us. We are not familiar. That's I feel we are the handicapped when we don't need to be. Thank you.
I am so enamored with this subject, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I never tire of thinking about it. And you know, there is one of the paragraphs in the long obligatory prayer is essentially an affirmation of these layers, and the ringstone symbol is an affirmation of this greater universe that we are part of, that the manifestations are part of. And without getting into it, because it's so involved, but the mystery of the most great spirit that has a name, which is the name of the most great spirit, which is the most great name. There are connections to the word Baha that go back long before Islam even. They're rooted in Buddhism and in the Old and New Testament. And, it was kept a secret. And it was kept a secret because it was a hidden mystery. But it's a very powerful description or factor in the interaction between the divine essence and humanity. It's one of the mechanisms. It's one of the beings. So there's a lot of symbolism of all of the faiths that are tied into this. And so I'm hoping to find an opportunity to share it, record it, put it out there somehow.
Dr. Etemad,
Yes.
it's just so wonderful that you're here. We will hear the last comment by Aniela, and with your permission, it's 8:45. We
Of
will
course.
go to our devotionals.
Absolutely.
I wanted to thank you profusely for accepting to share this evening with us. We all love you. We think you are a great speaker, and I would like to ask you please to come back again. May I ask you to come back again?
I love doing this. It's just like drinking the best cup of tea. The process of sharing the truths of the revelation, or the truths of anything, of science or anything. So this is a gift you give me. So I'm very grateful, and of course I would be delighted to share more.
Thank you.
Mr.
Aniela, would you like to ask your last, or if
I
there's a
I was
comment?
just going to say, this most great mysterious spirit that Kambeze is speaking of, maybe we can turn our hearts now to that. And this country is just undergone a major upheaval, whichever way, and we don't bother with politics. It's not our way. We are concerned with hearts, but maybe we could turn our hearts in prayer and solace.
We have been given the easiest way to do that, to give just a quick thing. The bottom line of a lot of this talk is that the name of the most great spirit is Baha.
Beautiful.
Baha is the name of the most great spirit. And so the word Baha is not referring to Mirza Hussein Ali.
Yes.
It's that Mirza Hussein Ali took on the name of the most great spirit because he became the full reflection of it at this time in history. But the word Baha is actually referring to the most great spirit. And Abha is a derivative of the same word that refers to God itself, the essence that is beyond understanding. So when we turn and say, Ya Bahá'u'lláh, we are saying, O Baha of Abha, O the glory of the all-glorious, O the most great spirit comes from that which is beyond the most great spirit.
Yes.
So it's been made so easy for us to invoke this degree of divine power in this day. So as we invoke it tonight and during this time in the world, this is the means that we've been given to do it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make it very easy for the friends to find. There are many references to that the Baha'i cosmology.
Yes.
They are called in the Baha'i writings. They show up as such: the world of God, the kingdom of revelation, and the kingdom of creation.
Yes.
Now, this can be easily found in the medium obligatory prayer, as has been referenced. at the beginning of the first paragraph of the medium obligatory prayers that's in our everyday prayer books. We can open it to the medium
Right.
obligatory prayers, and the first paragraph opens with statements. This statement: the world of God and the kingdom of revelation
Yes.
and of creation.
Correct.
That's the it's like setting the stage. It is of course my personal. It's setting the stage of where we are, as you mentioned, where we are situated in creation, in existence. Where are we?
Yes.
And that explains exactly where we are, and that symbol exactly pinpoints exactly where we are situated in the whole of existence.
Absolutely.
Mr. Taherzadeh, I wanted to thank you very much for your comments.
Thank
I
you.
really, really appreciate it. We have only time for a few prayers. Mr. Leblanc has offered to start the prayer. I would appreciate it, Bob, for choosing that prayer and suggesting it. And Tara Jan and the rest, please go ahead one after the other. Thank you again. I wanted to thank every one of you for coming here. This is not a formal fireside, it's a family gathering. We come together, we love each other, although there are all these differences, but we love each other because we are all of the human race. Thank you very much, Kambeze John. Dr. Etemad, thanks a million. Appreciate it. I wanted to thank your mother too. If you see her, please express my gratitude to her.
I will.
Bob, please go ahead.
Thank you, Feroz, for another beautiful evening. I'd like to say this prayer in the spirit of what Aniela said about the United States, and this is a prayer from Abdul Baha. O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. These hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, this American nation is worthy of thy favors and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestowal.
Going to chant hidden words number 1. به نام گوینده توانا ای صاحبان هوش و گوش اول سروش دوست این است ای بلبل معنوی ای بلبل معنوی جز در گلبن معانی جای مگزین وی هدهد سلیمان جز در سبای جانان وطن مگیر وی هدهد سلیمان جز در سبای جانان وطن مگیر مگیر وی عنقای بقا جز در قاف وفا محل مپذیر محل مپذیر این است مکان تو این است مکان تو اگر بلا مکان بپر جان برپری و آهنگ مقام خود رایگان نمایی این است مکان تو اگر بلا مکان بپر جان برپری و به آهنگ مقام خود رایگان نمایی
Friends, thank you very much. See you next week. Pina, are you there to say a prayer? Okay. Pina in Malaysian? Okay, we can't say no to Pina. Pina is, Pina is Pina. Pina, go ahead, please.
It's a healing prayer for all the ailing in Arabic. Ya ilahi, اسمك شفاعي.
يا إلهي اسمك شفاعي وذكرك دواعي ورجائي وحبك مونسي رحمتك طبيبي ومؤني في الدنيا والآخرة وإنك أنت المطيع العليم الحكيم إنك أنت المطيع العليم الحكيم حضرة بهاء.
Thank you very, very much, friends. See you next week. Much love. Dr. Etemad, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We appreciate it. Much love to all. See you in a week's time. Take care.